Imagine if everything you thought you knew about life, about why you're here, was just the surface of a much deeper truth, one that was intentionally buried, hidden from you not to protect you, but to keep you from awakening. There is a manuscript, over 1,200 years old, so powerful that entire institutions worked to erase it from history. Not because it was false, but because it was true. This book, forbidden, nearly lost to time, contains secrets that, if remembered, would shatter the illusion we've been taught since birth. It speaks of a journey, not after death, but before birth. A sacred, step-by-step process your soul underwent before it ever touched the physical world. A journey that explains your struggles, your gifts, your fears, your family, your body, and why you're here now, in this exact moment. And yet, almost no one knows. This isn't a fantasy. It's not modern theory. These truths were once preserved by mystics in hidden temples, passed from teacher to student in silence. But the book was banned, burned, its knowledge fragmented across time, resurfacing only in whispers, in dreams, in symbols, in ancient myths. Until now. They called it the Soul Codex, a guide not just of where the soul goes after death, but where it goes before birth. It describes not just what you are, but what you were before you became you. If you've ever felt like something about this world doesn't quite add up, like there's a deeper layer you can almost feel, but not quite touch, this might be why. The Codex reveals 10 sacred stages every soul goes through before incarnating. Preparations, agreements, choices, each one designed with clarity and love long before the veil of forgetfulness was pulled across your mind. And this information was hidden for a reason. Because a person who understands that their life is chosen, not random, cannot be controlled by fear. They don't submit blindly. They remember their power. The Codex was never meant for everyone, only for those who are ready. And if you're still watching, that might be you. Before the soul can ever be born into the physical, it receives something extraordinary. Not an order, not a command, but a call. A pure, vibrational invitation from the source of all that is. It's not heard with ears, but felt with the deepest parts of your being. It's not words, it's more like a song, a cosmic note that travels through dimensions and reaches your soul wherever it is, no matter how far it's wandered. This call doesn't come often. It comes when it's time. Time to evolve, time to grow, time to return to the dense world of matter, emotion, polarity, and transformation. And the most powerful part, you didn't have to say yes. You had a choice, and you chose. Somewhere beyond time, you heard that ancient call and responded. You, the eternal soul, said yes. You agreed to re-enter the physical world, to feel love again, to feel pain again, to remember who you are by first forgetting. This moment of decision, the soul's consent to incarnate, is one of the most sacred acts in existence. And yet, you've likely never heard of it. Why? Because acknowledging this truth would mean everything you experience now was chosen by you. And that kind of self-responsibility is terrifying to the systems that feed off fear and helplessness. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. That call you answered long ago, it still echoes inside you. You hear it in the quiet moments, in the awe of a sunset that stirs something ancient in you, in the eyes of a stranger who feels oddly familiar, in the restlessness that wakes you in the middle of the night and whispers, "You came here for more than this." That is the call, the same one you answered before time. It never really leaves. It only waits for you to hear it again. And now that you're starting to remember, the journey truly begins. Because the moment your soul accepts the call, it sets everything in motion. The review, the counsel, the mission, the family, the body, the forgetting. And then, the leap into this strange, beautiful, painful world. But first comes that one perfect moment of choice. The soul hears the call and answers, just like you are right now. After the soul accepts the cosmic call, it doesn't immediately descend into a physical body. First, it must confront itself, not with fear, not with shame, but with truth. In a realm far beyond anything we can comprehend with human senses, the soul undergoes what ancient mystics called the life review. But this is not a judgment. There is no courtroom, no throne, no angry deity passing sentence. Instead, imagine being completely surrounded by your own consciousness, amplified, expanded. You're shown not just the moments you remember, but every moment you forgot, every thought, word, and action you ever lived. Not through memory, but through full immersion. You feel what others felt in response to you. You witness the ripple effect of every choice, even the ones you thought were insignificant. If you caused pain, you experience it, not as punishment, but as deep understanding. If you brought joy, you feel the warmth of that joy echoing endlessly. It's not about guilt, it's about empathy. The life review is the soul's most profound lesson in interconnectedness, and perhaps the most startling part. You realize that the moments you judged yourself most harshly for were the very ones that taught you the most. The mistakes you regretted were catalysts for growth, not just for you, but for others. You see how your darkest hours gave birth to someone else's light, how your vulnerability became someone else's strength. It's humbling, and it's liberating. You begin to understand that nothing, absolutely nothing, was wasted. Every experience served a purpose in the grand weaving of souls, and that changes everything. When the soul sees the totality of its actions without ego, it also sees its own evolution. It sees where healing is still needed, where forgiveness is still withheld, not from others, but from itself. And that realization opens the door to the next stage, a stage even more mysterious, more sacred, the meeting with the Council of Souls. After the review, the soul is not left to wander alone. It is welcomed into a gathering, a luminous circle of beings who have walked with you through lifetimes. They are not strangers. They are ancient friends, spiritual mentors, divine companions. Some you might recognize as familiar energies that have visited your dreams. Others have no face, no name, but their presence feels like home. In this space, there is no hierarchy, only love, only truth. Together with this council, your soul begins to co-design the next chapter of your journey. This is where decisions are made, not forced upon you, but chosen by you, in complete clarity. You examine the lessons your soul still desires to master, the qualities you long to develop, courage, compassion, patience, forgiveness, and you look at the karmic threads that remain from past lives, unfinished stories, wounds still echoing, bonds still pulling. But you don't do this alone. The council helps you see from a higher view. They show you timelines, probabilities, the endless patterns of cause and effect. They help you understand how even a single choice can shift lifetimes. And then, together, you begin to map the next incarnation. You decide, what will your greatest challenge be? What kind of relationships will mirror your inner growth? What patterns will repeat until you face them fully? You choose your soul contracts, those beings who will meet you on earth to teach, to trigger, to love, to test. Some will be allies, some will be adversaries, but all will be sacred. And here is the most astonishing part. None of this is accidental. That toxic relationship that shattered you, you may have asked for it, knowing it would awaken your boundaries. That child who changed your life. You may have promised to meet again, lifetime after lifetime. The pain, the loss, the synchronicities, you see them in advance, and you choose them anyway. Not out of masochism, but out of love for your own growth. You are not assigned a life. You architect it. The council never pressures, never imposes. They remind you of your power. And then they ask the question, are you ready? And if the soul says yes, truly yes, then the blueprint is set. The contracts are sealed. The story begins to take shape. You know the risks, you know the pain, you know you'll forget everything. And still, with a calm, fearless certainty, you say yes. Because something in you knows, this is how you return to the light, not by avoiding the darkness, but by entering it fully and remembering who you are inside it. And with that decision, the next stage begins. The purpose is chosen, the body is selected, and the veil of forgetting draws ever closer. But the soul is not afraid. It remembers its strength. And somewhere, beneath all the noise of this physical world, it still remembers. After the soul has chosen its mission and agreed to the lessons it wishes to embody, there is one decision that changes everything: the selection of the physical vessel and the earthly environment in which its journey will unfold. This is not random. You did not simply appear in a body by chance, in a family by accident, in a culture or country by coincidence. Every element of your incarnation was chosen by you with unimaginable precision. The body you wear, the voice you speak with, the color of your eyes, your health, your struggles, your strengths, none of these are flaws or lucky breaks. They are blueprints, sacred, intentional designs selected by your soul to best support the life purpose you committed to before crossing the veil. The ancient manuscript reveals that during this stage, the soul is shown various potential lives, like holographic blueprints, each connected to different families, different timelines, different bodies. You are offered glimpses, not of comfort, but of alignment. Alignment with the mission you chose. Some paths might seem more difficult, others might appear more pleasant, but the soul does not think in terms of easy or hard. It thinks in terms of expansion. Which body, which genetics, which family system will catalyze the deepest growth? Which emotional landscapes will draw out the hidden strength you vowed to awaken? Sometimes that means choosing to be born into love. Sometimes it means choosing to be born into trauma. This may be hard to hear, because for many, the idea that you chose to be born into abuse, poverty, violence, or abandonment can feel offensive or even cruel. But remember, your soul sees through a different lens. It understands that the deepest wounds often carry the greatest power, that breaking a generational cycle of suffering takes more courage than most can imagine. You did not choose pain for the sake of suffering. You chose it because you knew you could alchemize it, because you knew you could turn poison into medicine, not just for yourself, but for the bloodlines that came before you and the ones that will follow. Your family, whether loving, broken, complicated, or absent, was not chosen for convenience. They were chosen for evolution. Even your body, the very structure of your physical experience, was no accident. Your height, your gender, your voice, your nervous system, even your so-called imperfections, your soul selected each attribute like tools for a divine mission. You may have chosen a body prone to illness not to be punished, but to learn to listen, to slow down, to discover healing from within. You may have chosen physical beauty to learn the difference between surface validation and true worth. Or perhaps your soul chose a body that would be judged by society so you could remember that your value was never based on external perception. Every curve, every scar, every cell in your body is part of the sacred technology that supports your evolution. When you understand this, you stop fighting your form. You stop resenting your past. You begin to see your life through the eyes of your soul as a masterpiece of choices made in wisdom. You realize your challenges were not punishments, they were permissions. Permissions to rise, to reclaim, to transcend. And perhaps the most beautiful part? Many of the souls you encounter, your family, your lovers, your enemies, chose you too. Some offered to be your mirrors. Others agreed to be your teachers. A few even volunteered to hurt you, not out of cruelty, but out of sacred agreement. Because on the soul level, even conflict can be an act of love when it serves awakening. This is not about blame, it's about liberation. Liberation from the illusion that your life just happened. It didn't. You wrote it. You signed the contract. And the moment you remember that, you begin to rewrite everything. But even after all this planning, all this clarity, one final step remains. A step more mysterious, more humbling, and more necessary than any other. In order for the game to truly begin, the soul must forget. The veil of forgetfulness. The soft, shimmering wall that separates what the soul knows from what the human remembers. It is not a punishment. It is not a flaw. It is a sacred part of the journey. Because without forgetting, there can be no true remembering. Imagine playing a game where you already knew every move, every ending, every outcome. There would be no challenge, no emotion, no transformation. The veil exists to create the realness of life, to allow you to discover courage in the face of fear, to find faith in the absence of certainty, to seek connection in a world of apparent separation. When the soul agrees to pass through the veil, it lets go of everything it has just prepared. The memory of its mission, the knowledge of its past lives, even the presence of the soul council fades into a whisper. You arrive in the physical world blank, innocent, wide open. You forget who you are so that you can learn it again, not through books or beliefs, but through experience. And yet, the veil is not perfect. It is not absolute. It is full of cracks and threads, glimpses, intuitions, dreams, that strange feeling that you've done this before, that uncanny familiarity when you meet someone new, that deep ache in your chest when you look at the stars and wonder where you really came from. These are not coincidences. They are echoes, fragments of memory bleeding through the veil, trying to remind you that you are not just a name, not just a body, not just this life. The veil also explains why life can feel so chaotic, so lonely, so unfair, because you forgot the plan. You forgot that every obstacle was one you agreed to face, that every soul you meet was part of a sacred web you helped design. But forgetting is not failure. It is part of the design. And there comes a moment, sometimes in meditation, sometimes in heartbreak, sometimes in sheer awe, when something breaks open. A moment of remembering. A moment when the veil thins just enough for the light to seep through. That's when it starts. The awakening. The realization that you were never lost. You were only playing a role. And now, the role is ending. The memory is returning. You are not here to suffer. You are here to remember. And the veil, once seen for what it is, begins to dissolve. Not all at once, but piece by piece, until the truth beneath it shines through. And you see your reflection, not in the mirror, but in eternity. And then comes the moment that changes everything. The moment the soul takes the final step and makes the leap, the crossing from the world of spirit into the world of matter. This is not simply birth. This is the most courageous act a soul can take. To go from being infinite, formless and all-knowing, to being small, fragile, limited, and forgetful. To trade eternity for time. Limitless light for a body made of skin and blood. This is not something the soul takes lightly. It knows exactly what it's about to enter. It knows the density, the confusion, the pain. It knows that once it takes that first breath, the clarity of the higher realms will vanish. The guidance of the council will fade into whispers. The memory of the sacred blueprint will dissolve like mist in the morning sun. And yet, the soul jumps. It leaps, not in fear, but in absolute trust. This leap of faith is what gives physical life its sacred weight. Because behind every newborn cry is a soul that once touched the stars, a being who left the realm of total peace to descend into chaos, not as punishment, but with purpose. When you were born, you didn't just emerge from your mother's womb. You crossed the boundary between worlds, from light to shadow, from knowing to seeking, from being to becoming, and everything that followed, your childhood, your joys, your wounds, your heartbreaks, all of it was part of the story you agreed to live. That first breath wasn't just the beginning of your physical life. It was the echo of a vow whispered across dimensions. A vow to grow, a vow to love, a vow to remember. In those early years, the soul still shines through. Children speak truths that no one taught them. They recall names and places they've never seen. They speak to invisible friends, not imaginary, but veiled companions from the other side. The veil hasn't yet thickened. The memory of who they are is still close, like a dream fading after waking. But as time passes, the world begins its conditioning. School teaches facts, not wisdom. Society teaches roles, not purpose. Family teaches survival, not soul. And the remembering fades. The light dims. The leap is forgotten. And the soul, now fully immersed in the human experience, begins to wonder why it ever came at all. But buried deep within each of us is the memory of that leap. A feeling that we were once more than this. A longing that no material thing can satisfy. A homesickness for something we can't name. And in moments of profound silence, or overwhelming beauty, or deep heartbreak, we feel it again. The echo of the leap, the truth of who we are, the memory of having chosen this life. These moments are sacred. They are the cracks in the wall, the glimpses behind the veil, the hints that our lives are not random, not meaningless, not accidental. They remind us that the soul's journey didn't end at birth. It only just began. Because after the leap, after the forgetting, after the immersion in human life, the true purpose begins to unfold. Not the mission you wrote in the stars, but the one you now must rediscover with your own hands. You see, choosing a purpose before incarnation is not the same as remembering it once you're here. The soul picks the lesson, but the human must choose to seek it. And that seeking, that journey of reclaiming your purpose, is where the magic happens. You were born with a specific intention, a soul blueprint, a signature vibration that is completely unique. No one else has it. No one else can fulfill it. It might not be a grand gesture or a public calling. Sometimes a soul comes simply to learn patience, or to bring healing to one family line, or to spark awakening in others through art, compassion, or truth. The purpose doesn't have to be dramatic. It only has to be real. It only has to be yours. And the signs are everywhere. In the things that stir your heart. In the pains that won't let go. In the patterns that keep repeating. Your purpose leaves breadcrumbs, scattered throughout your life like clues, waiting for you to notice. The things you're drawn to. The injustices that enrage you. The subjects you lose time exploring. The people who trigger you, and the ones who feel like home. All of these are signals. Even your greatest wounds are maps. The places where you have suffered the most often reveal the exact places you came to heal, not just in yourself, but in others. The abandonment you felt. Maybe your purpose is to help others feel seen. The silence you endured. Maybe your gift is to speak truth into the places where others hide. The grief you carry? Perhaps it carved a depth in you where divine love can now flow. Purpose is not a job. It's not a title. It's not what you do. It's the energy behind your life. The thread that ties your existence together even when nothing seems to make sense. But here's the secret. Your purpose was never lost. It was never somewhere outside of you, hiding in a career or a person or a distant dream. It has always been within, quiet, patient, waiting for you to pause, to listen, to ask the question not with your mind, but with your soul. Why did I come here? And when you ask with sincerity, not from desperation, but from remembrance, the answers begin to rise, sometimes in waves, sometimes in whispers, but always from within. You didn't just leap into life to survive it. You came to embody something, to remember something, to bring something through the veil that no one else can bring. And as you begin to align with that energy, everything changes. Synchronicities increase, doors open, old wounds find peace. Because the universe always supports a soul in alignment with its truth. You don't need to figure everything out. You only need to remember what you already chose. And the remembering begins the moment you ask not, "What should I do?" but "Who did I come here to be?" And the moment you reconnect with that question, truly, soulfully, your purpose begins to unfold like a flower, not in a flash, but over time, through choices, through presence, through courage, through truth. This is not the end of the journey. It is the point where the soul starts to rise inside the human, where the memory starts to outshine the forgetting, where your life becomes not just something that happens to you, but something that flows from you, like music you once wrote in a place beyond time. A melody only you can remember, and only you can play. If all of this was real, if your soul truly chose this life, planned its mission, selected its challenges, its body, its family, even its pain, then a question naturally rises, one that burns quietly in the background of everything you've just heard. If we are eternal beings who designed our own existence, if we have always had access to higher guidance, if we were born with purpose and power and memory waiting to awaken, why were we never told? Why did no one mention this when we were children? Why does the world teach us the exact opposite? That life is random, that suffering is meaningless, that we are powerless against fate? The answer is uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. You were not told because a soul that remembers its power cannot be manipulated. A person who knows they are an eternal being cannot be ruled through fear. They do not obey out of guilt. They do not follow blindly. They do not hand over their will to systems that profit from their amnesia. For thousands of years, those who sought to control the masses understood a simple truth. Memory is power. Not just the memory of your name or your story, but the memory of your origin, your divinity, your freedom. And so the great forgetting was not only spiritual, it became political, philosophical, educational, institutional. From the moment you were born, the world began teaching you to forget that your life was designed by your own soul, to forget that your challenges were chosen, to forget that the voice inside you whispering for more was the only true authority. Instead, you were taught to follow, to conform, to compete, to suppress the inner knowing in favor of external rules. You were taught to doubt the mysterious, to ridicule the sacred, to mistrust the voice inside you and bow to the voice outside you. Religions turn the divine into something distant, unreachable, a being that judges from above instead of one that breathes within. Governments turned people into numbers. Societies turned purpose into productivity. And all the while, the deeper truth waited, buried beneath layers of illusion, quietly pulsing in your chest. They couldn't destroy the truth, so they distorted it, rewrote it, hid it in symbols, burned the texts, silenced the teachers, branded them as heretics, witches, dreamers, madmen. But truth has its own gravity. It pulls, it calls, it never dies. And even in a world engineered for forgetting, some part of you never stopped listening. That quiet ache for meaning, that's your soul. That fire in your chest when you hear something that resonates so deeply it feels like déjà vu. That's remembrance. It means the memory isn't gone, just sleeping, waiting. And once it begins to awaken, it cannot be reversed. Once the soul starts to remember, the illusions start to crack. The systems lose their grip. The fear starts to fade. And the questions you once feared begin to feel like liberation. Who am I really? Why did I choose this life? What else have I forgotten? And that brings us to now. Because once you realize the forgetting was part of the plan, but not meant to be permanent, you're faced with a choice, a sacred one. You can go back to sleep. You can dismiss all of this as fantasy, keep playing the game you were handed, and stay within the boundaries others built for you. Or you can wake up. You can start the process of remembering, not all at once, but piece by piece. You can begin to pull the threads, follow the signs, listen to the whispers. You can start to align not with the noise of the world, but with the quiet knowing inside you. You can reclaim the truth your soul always knew, that you are eternal, sovereign, free, and that your life is not something that happens to you, but something that flows from you. This remembering doesn't require perfection. It doesn't ask you to escape the world or to renounce your life. It asks you to bring your soul into your life, into your choices, into your relationships, into the way you speak, work, love, and create. It's not about abandoning the human experience. It's about embodying the divine through the human experience, and there are ways to do this, practices that help tear the veil. Silence is one of them. In silence, you begin to hear the voice beneath the noise. Meditation, even for a few minutes a day, is like watering the soil where the memory is buried. You begin to feel things shift. You start to see more clearly. Dreams are another doorway. During sleep, the soul travels. The body rests, but the consciousness remembers. Lucid dreams, repeated symbols, encounters with people you've never met in waking life. All of these are fragments of truth, scattered through the subconscious. Don't dismiss them. Track them. Ask them what they're trying to reveal. Intuition is your soul's native language. That gut feeling, that inner knowing, that irrational pull towards something that just feels right, that is remembering in action. Follow it, even when it doesn't make logical sense, especially when it doesn't make logical sense. Because your soul doesn't speak in logic, it speaks in resonance. And perhaps the most important key of all, ask. Sincerely, humbly, courageously. Ask your higher self, ask your soul guides, ask the universe. Say, show me who I am, help me remember, and then be still and listen. You won't be ignored. The answers might not come in words. They might come as synchronicities, as people showing up at the right time, as sudden clarity or tears for no reason, or a feeling so strong it shakes something loose inside you. That's how remembering feels. It's not always loud, but it is always true. The awakening of your soul is not a single moment. It is a path made of countless small choices that lead you back to yourself. And the most beautiful part? You are never alone on that path. Even when you feel isolated, your soul team walks beside you. Your counsel still watches. Your higher self still sends signals. The universe still responds to your intention. Every sincere step you take toward remembering is met with grace. And every time you fall back asleep, the call returns. Gently, persistently, because your soul is infinitely patient. It has waited lifetimes for this. Now the question is no longer whether the truth was hidden. The question is what you will do now that you've seen it. Will you honor it? Will you listen? Will you act? Or will you forget again? You see, remembering who you are isn't just a gift. It's a responsibility. Because once you remember, you no longer move through the world asleep. You move with awareness, with purpose, with presence. You become the spark that wakes others. You become the living proof that the soul cannot be silenced forever. That truth will always find its way back to the surface. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real reason you came here. not just to remember for yourself, but to help others remember too.